if you look technically, it's a one transaction. If something is export for somebody, is an import for somebody. Like whatever is export for you, for somebody it is import, right? So the main documents will not change. Main documents, like for example, invoice, packing list, certificate of origin, or bill of lading, or freight certificate or quality certificate. The very basic documents which are prepared by an exporter, which goes along with the shipment. Normally we call these as the commercial documents. Commercial documents which goes with the shipment, move with the shipment, or they are mentioned in letter of credit. These are documents which are mentioned. So they are sacrosanct. Whether it is import, whether it is export, those documents are already there. They move with the shipment. Move with the shipment means the original, not the original ones. The second copies, the original ones move through banks to the importer, and it is bought by the importer through banks, right? So what started as an export procedure, export method at one point, constitute as an export for somebody. All those documents are already sacrosanct. They goes through banks. They are bought by the importer, and that is where the import part starts. When the goods come, he used the same documents, and there are certain documents which are not connected with the shipment, which are connected with the the host country. Like if it is the importer's country, there are certain documents. There is the export country, there are certain documents. So these are the documents which are obviously they are different. Like for exporter, we normally call these documents as regulatory documents. Because they are required for regulations of the home country of exporter. And on the import side, wherever the importer is sitting there, their government also have their own regulations. So these are the regulatory documents from those. Please, you are free to interrupt me in between, because we are not a very large group. We are reasonable size of the group. We can always interrupt and talk about, and if something is not understandable, you can talk. This is one thing. Second thing I want to also share with you that because everybody comes from a different background, different roles, and different understanding and different knowledge. Certain things may be much easier for somebody, and for somebody it may be difficult. So what I will be taking a middle approach. In the middle approach, I will be talking about some of the things which are very basic in nature. So if you already know about it, probably you can add something on this for the benefit of others. So idea is that we are able to talk about things in a manner which is understandable to everybody. So that's actually a necessary thing. So sometimes it happens that somebody who is on a different level sometimes find that these are very basic things, and probably this could have been skipped, right? So we will not be able to do that. So you'll have to excuse me for that. Okay. So let us start with the export part. I'll be just taking few slides as a warm-up to understanding of exports. Exporting is a most popular way for many companies to become international, and now it is happening in India with the Modi government thrust on internationalization. Exporting is usually the first mode of foreign entry used by companies. Selling to foreign markets involves numerous high risks arising from a lack of knowledge about and unfamiliarity with foreign environment, which can be heterogeneous, sophisticated, and turbulent. Okay, so that is more about the marketing part when we talk about. But it also talks about the legal part, regulations part, because every country have their own regulations, legal things. And also one more thing I want to tell you, that when you do business within India, many of the things can be ignored, right? But when you are doing things internationally, because laws are different, it's very heterogeneous environment, you have to be very, very careful. In a heterogeneous environment, the legal laws can be quite different, the understandability can be quite different. They can have some serious consequences also, very serious consequences. With small things. Like for example, I'll just give you one example. In some of the countries, Middle East countries, they want that the goods which are being exported from any country, anywhere in the world, they should be Quran compliant, right? So the countries ask that, and for that they have something called consular invoice. Consular invoice means some invoice, which is the main document, which is endorsed by the embassy of that particular country in your country, right? So once it is endorsed, it is automatic that it is Quran compliant. For example, so consular invoice would be required. It looks very simple thing. Like you go to an embassy and just get the stamp done. But imagine if somebody, is not complying with this. It can have very serious consequences. For some reason, inadvertently the goods are exported and you are unable to supply. Although consular invoice will be mentioned in the letter of credit, LC, right? So if you don't provide that consular invoice, your payment will not be made. But your payment will not be made and the goods will be confiscated. Now, for somebody living in India, it is very strange, like somebody is having that kind of consular invoice wherein they will like to check the description of the goods which are Quran compliant. And then there are similarly different laws and regulations of different countries. One has to be very, very careful. Why export-import procedure documentation assumes greater significance in international business rather than the domestic business is, on an international level, everything is become very bookish in nature. You have to go by the book. If you don't do that, like within India you can do it, but internationally when you do that, it has to be very bookish, because even a small non-compliance can lead into big disaster. And the first disaster would be your loss of business with a particular buyer. He will not work with you second time, right? So that is why the significance of export-import becomes very, very significant internationally, which is very different from our way of working within India. In India, we can work in any way. I mean, we can do mistakes and rectify the mistakes. But internationally, many mistakes, if you do, perhaps you will not be able to rectify it. You'll have to pay a very heavy price for it. This is normally what we say about it. Manufactured goods accounted for almost 60% of exports of developing countries. Because of every export transaction, there is by definition an import transaction, which I just told you. Right? So both are connected. Aside from differences between the procedures and rationale for exports and imports, both are largely the same the world over. I mean, this part is very interesting. Whatever the export-import procedures we normally discuss for India, this knowledge is, in your case, suppose you are posted in some other country and you are handling some other unit in some other country doing the same job of export-import documentation, you will find that many things are very similar. Maybe here or there some names are changed. One major reason why it is so is because our procedures are export procedures, documentation, and the nature of documents are aligned with other WTO members. This whole game of multilateral trading internationally is mostly controlled by WTO, World Trade Organization. Which from my perspective, it's like a Rotary Club or a Lions Club. I mean, a club of people, and they have agreed on certain procedure documentation or the aligned documents, so-called aligned documents. Even the documents sizes and the formats are all aligned. It is called Aligned Document System, ADS. So you will find that whatever we are learning in these 2 days will be suitable not only for India. If you are working for some other country, in some other place, you will find that many of the things are very similar in nature, right? Like for example, even for imports, IGM, Import General Manifest, or you will find the similar names because the cargo moves internationally. They cannot have something different for India. They cannot have, normally they cannot have. There may be small differences here and there, but most of the thing, bill of entry will be bill of entry in most of the countries, or shipping bill will be shipping bill in most of the countries. Although shipping bill is a host country document, which has nothing to do with the buyer, which has nothing to do with the letter of credit, right? But you will find that in most of the countries, even the formats are similar. Even if it is electronic, even if it is online, you will find that the formats, the kind of information which is required would be very similar. So this is some of the characteristics which I am discussing about the understanding of export-import procedures. And as you know, when we talk of exports, these are some of the things which we do. We do all kind of research. Like for example, the country which you are dealing with, what kind of compliances they have. Like I told you about the consular invoice, or there may be some other provisions which may be unique to that. Some sanitary certificates may be required in certain countries, phytosanitary certificates. Some countries require, some countries. So this kind of research is required. Then the marketing part will be export, market segmenting, indirect exporting and direct exporting. Now, why I have mentioned about the indirect exporting and direct exporting, the responsibility of procedure and documentation may be different if you are doing a direct export or if you are doing an indirect export, right? It may be a deemed export for you. Somebody who is supplying the goods to a middle exporter, a person who is exporting, you are not the direct exporter, you still can get some benefits from the government in terms of excise duty concessions and sale tax concession as deemed export. So if it is an indirect export for you, then the documentation would be of a different type. That you will understand subsequently. And if it is, so just warming up with these slides. Importation of documentation in exports. Avoid columns related to smooth flow of goods with the right documentation. Timely proceeds, payment, release for your LC, timely payment. If everything is in order, everything is perfect, like bill of lading is perfect, consular invoice is perfect, certificate of origin is perfect, so timely payment to maintain good relationship with the buyers. That is the idea. Compliance with the home country legal framework, right? Regulatory documents which I told you, we'll be discussing more about it. Arranging the export finance. Now, another purpose of these documentation procedure is also to arrange finance. Now, finance can be export finance as well as import finance, right? So, when you open a LC as an importer, you require a finance. There are provisions. When you get an LC, with that LC you also can get export finance at a very concessional rate. So something called packing credit, which you can get. So you need certain documentation, which we will be discussing. Arranging, readying the goods for exports. Again, you need certain procedure and documentation. Why at the time of readying the goods? Because when you ready the goods, sometimes quality inspection cannot be done once the goods has been already finished. Many of the goods required quality testing during the process of manufacturing. So certain documentation procedures required even before the goods have been already prepared, right? In process quality control, right? It will be mentioned in the LC. SGS inspection. The SGS is a Swiss company, third party inspection. So they will ask for a in process quality control, because once the goods have been prepared, there is no way to check whether the quality is as per the requirement, right? So during the reading of the goods also, you need certain procedures. Then appointment of the C&F agent in case certain things you want to outsource, like the a movement of the goods from the factory to the seaport or to the airport. You can outsource it. Many companies don't like to outsource because of the secrecy or privacy. Like if you outsource, then it becomes a public notice. So all the buyer information, price, everything become. So many companies do not want to appoint C&F agent, but many companies do it. So arranging the cargo insurance and shipping space by sea or by air, you require some documentation. This will be coming to that part also. So okay. So I'm just giving you an idea that which are the steps, which are the areas where will be and the purpose is of different type of documentation and procedures.
Please brief more about the appointing C&F agent, as I'm not aware of that procedure.
C&F agent is clearing and forwarding agent.
Clearing and forwarding.
Forwarding agent. What clearing and forwarding agent does? You know, you don't want to take any headache. You got a letter of credit, LC, and certain documents are mentioned for which you have to prepare. You will do that. That's not a problem. But as far as the dealing with the customs, dealing with the logistics company within the country, and if it is a CIF contract, so you know the understanding of this delivery terms we will be taking up, Incoterms, international commercial terms also. So depending on what kind of contract it is, if it is a FOB contract, C&F contract, the role may be more. Like for example, if it is D terms, for example, delivery terms, DAP, DDP, those kind of terms. In that case, C&F agent requirement will be much more necessary, because in DDP terms, delivery terms, you have to get the goods in the importing country, get them cleared from customs in DDP case, and even pay the duty there, right? So, which you may not like to do because your routine work will be hampered. So, in which case, you will definitely like to import a C&F agent.
Basically, our CHA.
Or, yeah, CHA. CHA, actually, custom house agent, technically speaking, is a very small part. CHA means somebody who has been authorized by customs to sign the documents.
Sign the document, and also they can releasing our document to them.
Yeah.
And also releasing the material and deliver to us.
Yeah. A CHA is like a chartered accountant or somebody who is authorized to deal with the customs. So companies can have their own CHA. They can have somebody employed as a CHA. But C&F agent also has CHA, and he does many other things. Like for example, CHA will not do the import side. On the host country side.
Actually, mainly customers are doing CHA work in company.
They do everything.
Our company is having Kirti was logistic. They can provide all the things.
All the things. You know what has happened?
Like transportation, clearance, import, export.
Basically, instead of saying that they are C&F agent, they call them as CHA, because that is more, like reputable. Like, it's more prestigious, right? But if you look at, that's why I use the word technically. Technically means what CHA means, custom house agent, is like, for example, advocate. When you have got a legal case, you are not normally not in a position to deal with the magistrate directly because you don't understand the language, right? So what advocate does, advocate is a LLB. He is a registered bar member, right? So he take up the case on behalf of you to deal with the magistrate, and magistrate feel very comfortable. Similarly, customs feel very comfortable if there is somebody who has taken up their tests, their customs tests which are done, different levels are there, and somebody who clears those tests becomes a CHA, custom house agent, right? And CHA is a qualification. A CHA, even a company can employ. A company can employ, like companies employ LLB people or somebody advocate or a chartered accountant. Companies can also employ CHA. So what happens? These C&F agents, sometimes they call themselves as CHA, right? But basically they are C&F agents, clearing and forwarding agent. Because clearing and forwarding agent is more like, goods transfer from here and there, trucking, and or taking the documents. So instead of calling C&F agent, they sometimes, one major selling point for them actually is CHA only. Because many of the companies cannot afford to employ a CHA. So they say that we are a C&F agent with a CHA, which means we have got the license also, right? So that's why, so I'm just giving you this idea why people call them as CHA. Although CHA is a very, very small term. It's one person who is authorized by customs to sign the documents and put a stamp. That is CHA. So these companies which provide all these services are basically clearing and forwarding agents, but they call them as CHA, right? I mean, just for your knowledge, just to make things clear, so you'll have a better idea. Okay. And of course, another thing, C&F agents, what has become dirty also in the market, Because what happens, the moment they call them as C&F agent, they become the instrument of selling your information to everybody. Obviously, it's a third party, right? They are not working for you only. They are working for 10 parties. Now, even if you ask the party, please tell us some 2-3 more parties, what the price of this item. Yes sir, we worked for other company, they sell the same item. So their price was this. So sir, I don't want orally. Sir, I will provide you the document also. So he'll take a photocopy of all the set and they will give it to you, even free of cost. So what has happened, that people are become very afraid of C&F agents. Because you do so much of research in the marketing and you create new buyers and you make good relationship with the buyers, and probably it has taken 1 year, 2 years to develop a new party, and all this become very like public.
Yeah, and they just leak all
Yeah.
details.
Yeah. See, C&F agent, why since he's working for many companies and he's getting better terms from somebody else, so obviously he will not mind sharing the information. So that is another reason why they don't want to call themselves as C&F agent. They emphasize on the word CHA, telling them that I am inevitable. You have to go through me because who will sign your documents? That's the problem, right? So it becomes inevitable. It becomes a necessary evil to go to a CHA because he is better placed to deal with the customers, Indian customers. But in the bargain, it is possible that you are losing your information to somebody. So this is just to give you make it things clear. So if you can appoint your own CHA, or you do self-declaration, somebody who has got the test have been cleared by customs examination has been cleared, somebody you can employ at a reasonable salary. That is always a better thing. That's always a better thing. If you want to maintain secrecy and privacy of your information, it is always better to employ your own person who can sign the documents. And for certain transaction, now Indian government has made it is not mandatory also that the document has to sign by CHA. So you can do self-declaration also.
But there, I've got a question to ask.
Yeah.
Is it such a critical process which you can't outsource?
Obviously. Yeah. Should not. You should not. You should not outsource. But people do it.
Right. But then this is a typical trend in business that people outsource,
yes.
process for CNH.
Yeah.
Now, government also,
Even
some
government
initiative also,
outsources.
like you can upload some
Okay.
documents on an online basis. So I think in future, the work of CHA, the amount of work it will get reduced.
But
we can
yeah.
look at the perspective in-house development of
Yes,
this process.
definitely. The only problem which will come is when you are called by the customs. For something happens, there is some physical examination and some problem is there, and if you are not able to communicate with them in a technical language, then the problem will come. So for that you have to be ready. You need somebody, a person who is authorized by customs to talk with you. You can always go with them, but custom will not be very happy dealing with the client. Custom will be more happy with somebody who understands the custom language.
Interface should be like that.
Yeah, there has to be somebody. So even if you do self-declaration, you need to have some kind of association with somebody. In case you are called by custom for mostly for the import thing. In export, normally you can avoid. In export, normally you will not find such a situation very frequently. But in importation, especially for the valuation part, the valuation of the import cargo, to deal with the customs, you will need somebody. If you don't want to outsource. If you are outsourcing, the C&F agent, they know what to do. And so for the economic reason, people go for C&F agent because they feel that they will get a better deal from customs. So there is a economic reason why people go to. But in the bargain, they are losing their coordinates. Right? So this is a problem. So it's your decision. how you trade off on this. Then delivering the goods and documents to a send-off agent in case you have appointed them. Customs and port procedures you will need to understand for export as well as for imports. What are the customs procedures, port procedures, preparing post-shipment documents for submission to the bank. For post-shipment documents are mostly the documents which are as per LC. LC requires mostly the commercial documents, original documents, like commercial invoice, consular invoice, packing list, certificate of origin, freight certificate, quality certificate, insurance certificate, right? So these are the documents which LC demands. So after you make the shipment, you get bill of lading from the shipping company, bill of lading, that is the transport document. Along with that, you prepare all the documents which are demanded by the letter of credit. These are our post-shipment documents, which we will be talking about. You need those documentation procedures. Preparing, receiving payment from the bank. Now, at the time of receiving the payment also, you need to understand certain procedures, because RBI is monitoring that the goods which you have exported, what was the value of that goods and how much money you have received. There should not be any mismatch. So you need to have some procedures and documentation from the RBI point of view. Again, it's a home country regulations, so it becomes a regulatory document, right? Post-shipment document, but regulatory in nature for realization of the proceeds. Okay, so you need those documentation, and then finally you need documentation for receiving the different incentives. Like for example, if you paid the excise duty, you can get the refund. You have paid the sale tax, you can get the refund. Or there may be duty drawback, there may be some, nowadays duty scripts as per the new policy.
MEIS.
MEIS and SCIS, which we will be discussing about it. So, these are all incentives. You need some certain documentation. So, these are the different areas in exportation where you need to understand documents, where you need to understand the procedures. And more important than also is to understand the letter of credit. It is also called documentary credit. How the process of letter of credit works within the banks. What is the meaning of issuing bank? What is the meaning of advising bank? What is the meaning of negotiating bank? Right? What is the meaning of confirmation of the letter of credit? How to understand LC, what is the UCP, Uniform Customs and Practices, 500 and 600. So, that part also is very important to understand, because why it is important? One major reason, that when the letter of credit comes to you, you feel that LC has come and everything is fine. That may not be the case. First, you have to be in a position to accept the LC. Then only the process starts. And your acceptance of LC means that you are going ahead with the shipment, you are going ahead with the risks, So if your judgment is wrong, probably there was something in the LC which was not good for you, which could create problem for you. So for this reason, to understand the letter of credit, what should be there, what should not be there, that understanding has to be there. And for that, you have to understand how the LC works. Right? How much time it takes when you give the documents, how much time bank should take to get you the money, how the process works. If it is a side LC, how many days are required to get the payment? If it is a usance LC, usance means 90 days, 60 days, those kind of LC, deferred payment LC. So what is the process and how much time it will take? So those kind of understanding is all about what we are going to talk about today as well as tomorrow. These are the things which is our focus of understanding. Okay, so this part is okay. Now, before I take up the different documents, there is something I want to start with, which is very important for you to understand. Some of you already know it, but many of you will find it very interesting to understand everything we talk today and tomorrow. So that part I will take up in the form of a diagram. So this is something which I want to discuss. This is something I want to discuss with you. You know, this is a typical flow of, you know, the export as well as import. Any transaction, export import transaction, this is a typical flow of goods, flow of documents, and flow of money, payment. You can see it here. This dotted line you can see here is payment flow. This, you know, the solid line is the flow of the documents, and this dotted line is the flow of goods. If you look at between exporter and importer, so this flow has to be understood. Flow of goods, flow of documents, and flow of money. If you are able to understand this part, which is not very difficult, then everything else will become very easy for you to understand. Right? So what is the meaning of this? There is an exporter, there is an importer. Exporter supplies the goods, importer receives the goods. And this happens, the very first step for this to happen is the contract between them. There is a contract between the exporter and the importer. Now this contract can be very formal in nature. This contract also can be of a very simple form also, very simple. It can be just a fax letter that, okay, we agree on this per item, this quantity, this is the price, it has to be supplied this way. A simple fax copy. Many people start working on that only. Right? And the reason why they do it, they don't go for a contract, because they know it that the ultimate contract which will actually happen will be the letter of credit. Because LC itself is the contract. Once LC is there, all the meaning of all other contract becomes less important. So many people, for a practical reason, what they do, they have a very simple agreement or a simple order or an indent. Sometimes they use an indent, and sometimes they just get an endorsement of the performer invoice. That becomes a contract. Some people do that. Why? Because ultimately the contract will be of the exporter, not really with the importer. The contract actually will be with the issuing bank which issues the LC. Because once the LC has been issued, the payment is received by the exporter, not from the importer, but from the bank. So what happens? The LC itself becomes a contract. So for a practical reason, unless there is a long-term order, or unless there is a multiple shipments, or unless there are certain provisions which cannot be put in LC, people normally do not go for contract, a formal contract. But in some cases where it's a complicated shipments, like for example, Larsen & Toubro setting up a refinery in UAE, Dubai. The whole refinery will be implemented in 4 years, 5 years time, and there will be price increases, there will be different services cost, there will be equipment cost, there will be engineering cost, there will be commissioning cost. So there you cannot depend on an LC. There you need a proper contract. You know, in such kind of situation, you need a proper contract. But suppose there is a contract between an exporter from Chandigarh for supply of, you know, the gymnasium equipments, 100 pieces or 2000 pieces to some country. Probably you do not need a contract. You can go for a simple indent or a performance invoice and wait for the LC. Once you get the LC itself becomes a contract. So it starts with the export contract, and the exporter, based on the contract, start preparing the goods. Not preparing the goods, start waiting for the LC. Once the LC comes from the issuing bank, and LC, how the LC comes? The importer goes to the bank and asks them to open a LC, letter of credit, and that LC is advised to the exporter through advising bank. Now, why these two banks? One is the bank in the importer's country, and one is the bank in the exporter country. In the importer's country bank, what is the role of that bank? Is to open the letter of credit, and it becomes the issuing bank. The bank which is in the exporter's country, the local bank, becomes an advising bank. Why? Can somebody tell me why there is a need of another bank for advising the LC? Will somebody be able to tell me this thing? That once the buyer goes to the issuing bank and instruct them to open the LC. The issuing bank opens the LC and it is not sent directly to the exporter. It is sent to the nominated bank. From the technical point of view, it is called nominated bank, which becomes the advising bank for the exporter. Why there is a need of an advising bank?
So bank guarantees. So that's guarantee.
Guarantee for what?
Guarantee for the payments.
LC itself is a guarantee. LC itself is a guarantee, conditional guarantee.
Yeah, that is the
Right.
condition. But bank
Yeah.
is a mediator between the buyer and the supplier or the exporter.
No, the mediator between the buyer
Yeah.
and the exporter is this bank,
Yeah.
issuing bank,
Yeah.
because it is a guarantor.
But the exporter is not having any deal with that importer bank, so the exporter has to have an account with the domestic bank, and that domestic bank takes the guarantee for the payments or for the shipment.
See, as far as the guarantee part is concerned, this is your choice. If you want the guarantee, then it will also act as a confirming bank. What you are talking about, this bank also working as a confirming bank.
Yeah.
But that is understandable. What you are saying is right. That if you want the confirmation, you are right, because this bank is located in some other country, so this exporter may be wary or maybe skeptical about the nature of this bank and the guarantee of this bank, because it's outside the country and he is not a technical person.
Sometimes the bank,
Yeah.
the importer country bank doesn't have presence in India, like if I'm
Yeah,
exporting from
correct,
there.
correct. So even if this, suppose they have a presence, again there will be a bank, branch, again it will be a advising bank. And if it is not there, then there will be a nominated bank.
Nominated bank.
So they will advise. But my question is, apart from the guarantee part, what you are rightly saying, that is an option. Guarantee is an option. If you want a local confirmation, right? But why otherwise we need an advising bank is because again it's a very technical. Same thing. Like why you need a CHA dealing with the custom agent, because he understands the language.
Documents will go through that bank.
Yeah. So as a UCP practice, Uniform Customer Practices, issuing bank cannot send the LC in the international transaction directly to the exporter. It has to go through a local bank or its own bank, who advises the party for the on technical grounds. Because LC is a technical document. Our exporter is not supposed to understand the LC, all the technicalities. So it's a Uniform Customs and Practices (UCP), which is which has to be followed by all the banks internationally, right? It is framed by ICC, International Chamber of Commerce, ICC, Uniform Customs and Practices. The latest one is 600. Earlier it was 500. As per that, the LC has to go through a local bank. Now that local bank, you are right, can also be the branch of this bank, or it is a nominated bank. Why nominated? Because exporter will nominate that bank before LC is opened, because he has got as you are rightly saying, because he has got an account with that bank. He will like to be advised by a bank which understands or he knows about the reputation of exporter, right? So the bank in which you have an account is likely to give you the right advice. So that's why you nominate. When you do a contract, in the contract you nominate the bank to act as a advising bank, right? So the importer goes to the bank for the LC, and based on the LC, exporter will prepare the goods, and within the dates as per the LC, because there is delivery date and delivery terms, and on the port of loading will load the goods on the ship. I am giving you a very typical flow, but there is something more which we'll be discussing about it, because nowadays ship part is not taken care by the exporter. Nobody is bothered about ship and all these things, or the air, whatever it is. That has become a place to place instead of sea to sea. But for simplification, I am talking about the port of loading, or it can be place of loading in today's terms. Yeah.
Okay, just one question. The importer can nominate a bank in which he doesn't have an account as well as a nominating bank. Whether it's a prerequisite requirement, he should have an account in that nominated bank.
It's an agreement between exporter and importer.
Is that possible? Because I've seen that practice also. because one of my company, they don't have account in HSBC, they don't nominate the HSBC as a nominated bank.
Correct.
So it's not, I think,
It's again a bargaining power. Bargaining power between the exporter and the importer.
Okay.
Sometimes, you have to see that what is the interest of the importer
So first
in nominating.
First, you need to check with his bank whether he know the credential of that bank. If they are okay, so that he can nominate that bank as a nominated bank. Otherwise, he can.
If the exporter is nominating,
Okay.
in 99% cases, it will be the bank where he has the account. So the credit rating of that bank is easily available, right? It is easier to deal with,
Okay.
and he'll have perhaps he will have a less charges also, bank charges also,
Right.
because he is having an account,
Right.
and he will be having a overdraft limit also.
Right. Right.
So those are advantages. But if the bargaining power is low of the exporter and the importer feel that by nominating a particular bank he gets some benefit.
Okay.
See, in which case importer will be nominating the bank if he is dealing with many exporters. If he is dealing with many exporters in a particular country, he will not like that the LC advice from 10 banks. For its own convenience, he will like to nominate in that case buyer will nominate. See, ultimately nominated bank has to be written by the buyer only when he is giving the LC instruction.
Right.
So that bank may be as per the contract, if there is a contract in which nominating party has been already mentioned. So he has to go by the contract. That's why you need a contract, right? But suppose those formalities are not required. It's a simple indent, simple performance invoice, or there is no nomination. You are not bothered about which bank is the advising bank. Then he will nominate any bank. In which case, in all probability, that nominated bank will be either the branch of this bank or correspondent bank. There is another word. It is called correspondent bank. Correspondent bank means there is some local bank which has got a very regular dealing, daily dealing with that bank on a daily basis, and they understand each other. So it becomes a correspondent bank. So correspondent bank will automatically become a nominated, right? So it's a marriage of convenience. It's all marriage of convenience between the exporter and the importer. So how much relationship you have developed with the buyer will decide whether it is a nominated bank which is mentioned by you or it is a bank which is advised by the buyer. It's as simple, right? Okay. So it's good that you have asked because this base has to be very clear. You have to understand that the LC goes from the issuing bank to the advising bank, and the advising bank advises the LC. This LC will become effective only when there is a letter of acceptance by the exporter that I accept this LC. So what he will do? He will read the LC. If he doesn't understand any particular technical term, he will ask the advising bank, what is the meaning of this? And after understanding the meaning, he either has to reject the LC or he has to accept the LC. Why he will reject? If there is something in the LC which is against the contract. There is some condition, right, which slowly in these,
Either he can ask for
Yeah.
amendment also.
or he can ask for an amendment also. Correct.
Before,
Yeah. So he will not reject it. He will say, okay, I will talk to the buyer. He will immediately ask the buyer that I am not accepting it because there is some discrepancy, right? But that you will do only when you understand the LC, right? So once you understand the LC and once you have accepted the LC, the next step is to prepare the goods and get it loaded from the port of loading and taken by a carrier. It can be an air shipment, it can be a sea shipment, and goes to the port of discharge. And in the meantime, what happens? In the meantime, the moment goods have been loaded on the ship, the main document which you get is transport document, and that is the bill of lading. That is the main document, the negotiable document. Negotiable means that document, whoever is holding the document is the owner of the goods, basically.
So proof of export, I will. It's a proof of export, I will.
No, more than the proof, it is the document of title. That who is the owner. If it is in my hand, I am the owner. If it is in the hand of the bank, bank is the owner. And if it is for example, it is in the hand of the advising bank is the owner of the goods. Once it reaches the importer, the issuing bank becomes the owner of the goods. So what the importer has to do? Importer has to buy these documents by paying the money. Because LC has been opened on the reputation, depending on the reputation between these two. What is the reputation? If the reputation is very high, there is no margin money. The word used is margin money. What is the meaning of margin money? So when LC is opened by the issuing bank, he can take, depending on the relationship between the buyer, 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, or maybe even 100%, and even 110%. Even 110% margin money. Why 110%?
Who can take this margin money?
The issuing bank will take the margin money, which can vary from 10% to 110%, depending on the relationship. Right? If this importer has a bank account and very strong overdraft limit, then there is no need of even there is no need of even 10%. Right? The bank will open a letter of credit because there is an overdraft limit in crores or maybe 100 of crores. Right? But if the relationship is not there, so this bank may ask for margin money which can be even 110%. Why extra 10%? For any other incidental charges. Anything goes wrong.
And the margin money is on what? Like this 10% is on what?
On the contract value.
Overdraft limit. Either if you have an FD, they can lean that.
On the CIF value.
On the CIF.
Irrespective of what is the derivative terms,
Right.
on the landed value, CIF value.
CIF.
The CIF value, it can be anything. 10%, 20%, 30%, 110%. So depending on the relationship. So when the title documents, along with all the documents, like invoice, certificate of origin, when it comes to the importer, he has to buy it, settle the money, and take the documents and go to the customs to get the goods cleared. Without those documents, goods will not be cleared in sea shipment, not in air shipment, only in sea shipment. Because in air shipment, in air there is no need of any originals. You already have even the non-negotiable copies or the photocopies and the proof of identity. Your name is there. Your goods will be given. Why? Because in air shipment, if they don't do it, air shipment is very fast, and this movement of documents from advising bank to issuing bank will take 15 to 20 days, and air shipment will reach immediately. So that process cannot be done by air shipment. So in air shipment, you don't need the buyer do not need the documents. That's why in most of the cases, in case of air shipment, when LC is open, bank will always go for 100% or 110% margin. Otherwise it is not safe for the bank. Because as per the LC, money will be released by the bank. And since the requirement of document is not there, so what the buyer will do? Buyer will take the goods from the airport and perhaps he will not pay the bank. So in case of air shipment, in most cases, the money will be settled on the day when LC has been opened. So it is kind of giving advance money to the bank by the buyer in case of air shipments. That's why, just for your knowledge, I just want to tell you that in quantity terms, all the world trade which happens, 99% of the world trade by quantity happens by sea. Only 1% happens by air. In value terms, 95% of the world trade happens by sea and only 5% happens by air, because it is very risky. So air shipment is costly, risky, and it is required when there is no other choice. Like for example, perishable goods or something where only air shipment is possible. Life-saving drugs or fresh fruits or fresh flowers or very high costly items like diamonds, jewelry,
Limited shelf life.
yeah, or perishable, limited shelf life items, where it is inevitable. In which case, the margin money will be already taken by the bank, because bank will not take a risk. In sea shipment, the bill of lading is negotiable. In case of air shipment, airway bill, the same document which is bill of lading in air is called airway bill. Airway bill is not negotiable, is non-negotiable, right? Which means it is not that the person who has got the original is the owner of that case is not. So this is how the movement of goods, money and documents happen. So if that is understandable, if you understand this part,
I have a
then
question.
yeah.
In the issuing bank, bank or drawing bank both are the same or
Issuing bank and the
issuing bank and drawing bank?
Advising bank.
drawing, okay?
I'm confused in both of them.
Okay, let me tell you. There are two things. Whenever we talk about a bank, it's an issuing bank or a advising bank or a nominating bank, it's a role which happens, right? Now, from the bank point of view, for example, from the importer point of view, he is an exporter.
Yes.
But from the bank point of view, he is not an exporter. He is a beneficiary. So what you are saying, the dry bank, drawer and dry,
Right.
there are two things. So who is the drawer and who is the dry? Dry from banking language. Who is the drawer? Who draws the money?
Yes.
And who is the dry? Who pays the money? Right. So from if it is a guarantee, local guarantee, then the dry become the local bank. He will settle the money with them. If there is no local guarantee, then dry bank will be this. Right? But issuing bank means who issues LC. But dry bank may be the local bank or maybe the issuing bank, depends on whether there is a confirmation or not. You know what is confirmation? What is confirmation? Once the LC has been opened. And if the beneficiary or the exporter, beneficiary from the bank point of view, or the drawer feels that he is not sure about this bank, so he will ask his bank to confirm the LC and he will pay the confirming charges. Then in that case, dry bank become this. For him, the dry bank is the advising bank. But if it is not there, then obviously it is a dry. But this dry word is a banking perception. Drawer and dry, beneficiary or the payee. Whatever the word which is used. But for a export importer point of view, it doesn't matter. It is just the bank who pays and who is the guarantor. In normal case, he is the guarantor, but in the case of confirmation, the local bank becomes the guarantor. And then once he pays it, then he settles with the issuing bank. Ultimately, money has to be paid by the issuing bank. And depending on the reputation of the issuing bank, it may happen that he has paid but he is not getting the money. It is possible. Once he is a guarantor, he has paid the money, but he is probably not getting the money because there is some problem with this bank. It is possible. So that will be the wrong judgment of the advising bank who has confirmed the LC. And that is the purpose of guarantor, local guarantor or local confirmation.
This situation may arise when we discount the LC. Because bank release the payment in case of issuing bank.
No. Discounting is a different thing. I'll tell you what happens in a discounting. Only 2 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry. Just 2 minutes. In discounting, what happens? Suppose you want the money immediately. First of all, when it is a side payment, within 5 days you will get the money, or maximum 1 week you will get the money. But if it is a usance LC or a deferred payment, 60 days, 70 days, what you do, at some discount, you get the money from the exporter, but with a rider. With a rider. What is the rider? If the money does not come, then you will have to pay back. So, discounting again can be of two types. One can be again with guarantee that okay, I take the risk, then the discount will be more. Or it can be conditional, like a loan, that they have given you a loan, or like a kind of finance.
Like with rider or without rider?
With rider. So discounting is not does not mean that your responsibility of getting the money has, because if there is no confirmation, ultimately money has to come from the issuer. Right? This we'll try to discuss in more detail when we talk about the letter of credit. I think let's have a break.